Hey everyone, welcome to Handing the Shame Back, a YouTube channel dedicated to the up to 1 in 3 adult survivors of child sexual abuse here in Aotearoa and across the world. Each week I bring you a survivor interview or a supporter of a survivor interview because, hey lovely survivors, we can learn from them as well. As with each show, I ask that, please, if you feel triggered at all, you stop watching, go to the show notes below and you'll be directed for some help and resource. So it's my pleasure today to bring our next guest to you. And this man is doing an amazing amount of mahi in our beautiful country to support other male adult survivors. So his name is Tony Baker. He is a peer support worker for Male Support Services Waikato. He is a survivor, clearly, and he's also a dad. So without any more talking from me, welcome to the show, Tony.
Hi, morena Gloria. Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for having me on the show. Appreciate it. Just before we do start, I just want to acknowledge the passing of wahine yesterday, Hiniwirangi Kohu Morgan, a survivor, advocate for survivors. She was instrumental in rape crisis here in Hamilton, and when Te Whakaruruhau, I've got to get the name right here, the Waikato, well then it was the Māori Women's Refuge, it's now Waikato Women's Refuge. She was instrumental in starting that 35 odd years ago with a group of other women. So yeah, acknowledging her passing yesterday.
Kia ora.
Beautiful lady, absolute beautiful lady.
Hey, so thank you for that, Tony. So as with all our survivors, just needing to kind of take us back to the beginning, you're a survivor, you're here to share your story, and as with all of our beautiful survivors that do so, Tony, I know your heart is with the others who perhaps have been unable to find their voice or the courage to share. So I ask for your story in the hope that something you may say will help save a life out there or give someone a feeling of being less isolated and alone. So I guess, if you're comfortable on that basis, kind of talk us through, how old you were, what kind of happened. Okay.
Yeah, please. So I was 5 years old. I was groomed by our next door neighbour in the small community that I was growing up in. I didn't let anybody know what was happening and what had happened after it stopped. It stopped after roughly about 6 months from what I can recall. And when I first spoke about it, the first person I opened up to and told was my mum, and I was 23 years old at the time when I spoke to mum, and when I let her know who it was, mum agreed that it was over that 6 month period. We moved into that street. They were already there. Yeah, approximately 6 months later, they moved out. And he was the eldest son in the household. He was roughly about that 18 to 20-year-old. Possibly a little bit older. Mum actually couldn't recall. Yeah. yeah, as I say, the first person I told was mum, just 23 years old. So I grew up, oh, yeah, I was a bit of a shy kid. There was also behaviours. I wasn't able to really stand up for myself. Um, my confidence level in myself was pretty shot, really. Although, when I speak to old school friends, and they reckon they would never have had any idea, because I had this, I guess I was a facade that I was wearing, that I was always happy, that there was nothing wrong, and I'm okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Mm.
Tony, incredible, really, and I'd love to know, was your mum instantly supportive of you and believing of you?
Oh, absolutely. Mum, we sat there and we shed a lot of tears together. And then mum disclosed to me what happened to her as a child. And so, yeah, so the two of us are sitting on this back step at my place, blubbing on each other's shoulder, and sharing these stories. And I had no idea, and of course, mum had no idea. She sort of understood where the um, the behaviours had come from, and I don't know, you could call it, I guess it's a psychological thing, but it's your body that's doing these things. So the bedwetting was one that went on. That I was a bedwetter until up until what actually started to stop when I told mum,
Wow.
and it sort of carried on for about another 8 to 10 years sporadically, and yeah. That was really the first. That was the start of my healing journey. I'd been in survival mode up until then, I guess, not really understanding what was going on and why I was like that.
Yeah.
Um, I thought, I honestly thought I was the only one, and of course, I'm not allowed to tell anybody, and there were threats made against my family, and as a 5-year old, you know, excuse me, I took all that on board, and lived with that, that fear that something would happen to my family.
And
Yeah,
and 100%, Tony. I don't think, and for our survivors watching, they'll all be nodding, I bet you,
mm,
that I don't think people realize that even though we're adults talking about this now, at the time, we were small children where
yeah,
adults were big, we were little, they were right, we were wrong.
yep,
They knew everything, we knew nothing. I mean, there was just so much in the way of a power differential. And what an adult said, we believed.
yeah,
So,
absolutely,
of course, there was no choice. And, you've raised some fantastic thinking around all of this. And if okay with you, I'd like to take you back to something you've said, which is, the bedwetting and other behaviours. When we look back, Tony, isn't it, of course, obvious that that would be one of the symptoms we were
yeah,
shown?
yeah, absolutely. And today, when I hear of, when my friends tell me that their children are wetting the bed, and I say to them, you need to ask them questions, and you need to ask the right questions, and make sure you also include asking questions around whether someone has touched them inappropriately, because I didn't have those questions. There was, as a child, I was told that there was something wrong with my body, so
Yes,
whether my bladder wasn't big enough, or
yes.
I was in that deeper sleep that I didn't realize that I needed to go to the toilet, all of that. Mum and dad had me going through, I had all sorts of medical intervention from our GP, urologist, psychologist, but no one asked me the right questions. No one, I look back at it, and when I look back at me and what was going on, and I look, where I work today, and the children that I see coming through, and I just feel so grateful that we've got this service here now, because I look back and, if there was a service back then, and back in the 70s, that that were supporting um, survivors of sexual violations, that um, I'm pretty certain that mum and dad would have had me in there. We just had no idea.
No.
Yeah,
But equally though, Tony, we lead the world in child sexual abuse stats. Our
I
stats
know it's
are,
disgusting, isn't it?
yeah, we are up to 1 in 3, and
Yeah.
the point is, so even though all these services are out there now, it's not stopping the prolific abuse and the statistics that occur. So
Mm.
I think one of the things also that you've talked about, and I just want to add to it, good on you, and thank you so much for talking to your friends about their children who are bedwetting. Here's a little tip that I think is quite powerful. When you think back, and your friends will perhaps be able to use this. We were told we could never speak because our family would be hurt, or your pet would be killed, or whatever. So maybe instead of asking the question, find for people to ask the question, what's happening, or are you okay? Give them some paper and a pen and say, I realise you may have been told you're not allowed to talk about it, but no one said you can't write it down.
Yeah, that's right. Just going to write that down quickly. Carry on.
Well, I just thought we can beat these sneaky abusers,
Yeah, true.
because we're not allowed to speak of it, or children aren't, but they never said anything about writing a yes or no. So that was never mentioned. So sometimes drawing a picture, or guessing a name, can sometimes be, writing a letter A, B, C, D, E, and they nod their head when you get to there's lots of things we can do to try and give children a possible way to share.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That'll be $120, thanks.
I reckon, yeah, something I'll share with some of our play therapists that work here as well, and just share what happened with myself, and hopefully that can help them with bringing that out. I'll pass this on, but no doubt they've got that, with that, I guess, that play therapy, that would be part of their learning in that space, as to how to draw this out of how to draw this information out of children.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard. It's a hard one. You
Yeah.
talked about before, so backtoyou.com. This is about you today, Tony. Backtoyou.com. You mentioned too that your mum and you, when you were having a conversation, I'm paraphrasing, but were able to make sense of some of the behaviours that you'd been showing. What were some other behaviours? Simply because our survivors watching may think, oh my gosh, that was me too.
So I've been taught that, this is what, mums and dads did. And, I, as a 6-7-year-old, afterwards, I was showing the other children in our street. And I still actually feel a bit guilty about that. It's when I think back of how that unfolded. One of the children spoke to their parent, who's come and spoke to my dad, and of course, that was, there was punishment ensued from there. And I learned very quickly that I'm going to keep my mouth shut and I'm not going to tell anybody else, and I'm not doing this again. And yeah, so yeah, so that was one. There was I started to learn how to lie and how to sneak around, and do things a little covertly. And of course, wasn't exactly the best at doing things covertly as a, you know, as a in my early childhood. So of course, I did get caught, and yeah, so and once again, punished, and just learned very quickly that you just don't do that. Um, don't try and go behind people's back, but it's okay not to tell anybody what's actually happening, and it's not, just sit there, shut up, be seen, not heard,
Now,
type, type thing. So,
and I just want to just give some beautiful araha to your little 6-year-old heart that was sharing what happened to you with your little mates, because Tony, there was no way on this earth that you could have been responsible or known or understood the impact of what happened to you, let alone the fact that you were sharing it. And, please, I know it's easy for me to say to not feel bad about it, but honestly, if I showed you a little picture of a little 6-year-old boy, you'd be going, how on earth could that little one be responsible for anything? So it wasn't your fault. It never began with you.
no,
Um,
no, not at all. And I try and, I do my best to keep that in mind
yeah,
when I fall into that space of feeling guilty
yeah.
about what I did, feeling guilty about, what I learned, and decided that it was okay to pass on.
Well,
Um,
the
so,
fact is, what, here's a little positive about it. This is how powerful your mind was and our minds are, that
mm,
here you are trying to release it in some way.
mm,
That's the power of the mind.
yep,
Now, nowadays, if you saw a little fella talking like that, what would your first instinct be? How would
yeah,
he how would he know that?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah,
So you
yeah.
want
Where did he learn that? Who was it that showed him? Might have been another kid in the street. But at least he can follow that pathway. And yeah,
hold the mirror up, buddy. And
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you're doing great, by the way.
Cool. Thank you.
But yeah, look, and the lying and sneaking, to me, Tony, I don't know about you, but having experienced child sexual abuse, and for our survivor family watching, we of course had to adapt to it. So our behaviours would have reflected that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
The lying and sneaking was exactly what that perpetrator did to ensure you never spoke.
Yeah. That's right. Um, it's like that. For them, objective achieved. They'd won. But yeah, no, not anymore. Not now. Not at all. With this, I think I talked about it earlier. I think might have been a bit before this, but having the service available back in the 70s for me, things would have been different. When I see the children that come in here on a weekly basis now, and it's just sitting here with gratitude. I'm so grateful that we're here, that we've learnt. Society's learnt. Society is growing. We're not there yet. We're far from it. But we're learning as we grow, and as we move along. and to be able to support these young fellas. And you know, I worked at the Henry Rongomoy Bennett Centre here at Waikato Hospital uh, a while back, and I met a couple of guys in there that I found out that they had severe sexual violence happen to them as children, and this is where they are. They in there. They've committed crimes. They got all this. I can't. I find it hard to figure it out, hard to understand how I didn't end up there, but I didn't. Something kept me off that or out of that space. The guys that I met when I worked for corrections for a couple of years that disclosed to me that what had happened to them, patch gang members. I'm just, really felt for those guys, and because that's where they are, and so doing my best to help others now, and especially these little ones coming through. Hopefully, we're going to start curbing a lot of these guys that are finding comfort with with a whānau outside of their own. Yeah, and yeah.
Yeah. And
Mm,
it's so wonderful that you can see it and you
mm.
can spot it. And I'm talking about our amazing survivors who are behind bars. And we
Yes,
know we know, Tony, that over 55% of our survivors, both male and female, that are in prison are survivors of child
yeah,
sexual. So, and that's a conservative number.
mm,
Um, yeah.
yeah,
So, it's got to come out somehow and somewhere. And, you know, I'm so grateful that you had a family that loved you and that you had, when you eventually disclosed, a parent that just believed you and wanted to support you.
yeah. Uh,
Unfortunately, not all of our survivors, including those in prison, do have that. I was going to say luxury, but it's a right, really. Every child has a right to be safe and to be loved
Absolutely,
and be protected.
absolutely. I had quite a regimental upbringing actually. My dad with his mahi with the government, um, and then I was sent to boarding school, which was actually quite hard as a bedwetter and survivor. Often picked on and bullied, and because it was my fault when I reacted, I was back in the day when they were allowed to cane children and strap children. That happened often at school for me. And then of course I leave high school and I joined the army and served 10 years in the army.
Mm.
So I had quite a regimental upbringing right up until I was 28 really. Yeah. And it was I think that played a big role also. um I worked out early what was right and what was wrong, how to recognize what was right and what was wrong when it popped up. It was. I think uh, that kept me safe as also. So I do give thanks for that.
Yeah, and I love it. I love your kind of ethos of gratitude
Mm,
throughout. I think that's quite a powerful thing and something as survivors we can struggle with at times is to feel grateful.
yeah.
So I think it's wonderful what you're sharing, and we can all learn from that.
Mm,
Tony, one of the things as you're talking, I'm picking up a thread, and I think the thread is um, reinforcement. And by that I mean, as you're talking, there's reinforcement throughout that, just bear with, but that you are wrong in some way. So, for instance, the abuse occurs at a young age, bedwetting then ensues, so that becomes a wrong thing.
mm,
I'm not saying your parents felt it was wrong, but you felt the weight of that. You
mm,
then go to, no one can find out why that's happening, so it's a wrong thing. Then you go to boarding school, and of course it carries on, so you then get punished for that. So
mm.
that reinforces that. Then, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
you go into the army, and that reinforces that. And of course, your behavior to try and protect yourself, or um, you know, be as safe as you can, reinforces more wrongness.
Mm,
So in a way, the abuse can continue. And it's interesting for us as survivors, because what happens is sometimes unknowingly, Tony, I just have a thought about this, that we can pick up the abuse and carry it on ourselves. And you'll see it reflected in people who are now in prison, or people who
mm.
have attempted suicide,
Yep.
or people who are addicted to drugs or sex or
Mm,
alcohol or gambling. The
mm.
list goes on, but
Yep,
self
absolutely.
abuse can continue. And I wonder what you think about that.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't long ago I had this conversation with my partner about, you know, that uh, um, that I will chuck a label on myself when I've done something wrong, or I've missed something, um, you know, dickhead, idiot, and I'm being polite, Fano, and being polite, because it gets worse than that. I fall into that space. Yeah, yeah, I went searching for, I found comfort in Jim Beam in my early 20s, and that carried on through to my, you know, oh, mid to late 30s. Um, and then I found poetry in a bottle, wine. And then of course, nah, I'm sort of over it. I still have a drink every now and then. I'll go and have a beer after I've mowed the lawns, on a hot day. I won't go I won't go off my property and drink. I'm not safe off my property, and with alcohol, I don't feel comfortable drinking off property.
Why?
Uh,
What's going to happen? Does the real Tony take charge, or what happens?
Well, I'm a bit scared that I'm going to get behind the wheel like I used to often in my 20s.
Yeah.
And I'm putting me at risk and everybody else around me at risk as well. So no, I'd rather sit at home and chuck on some YouTube music and hey, have a drink
Yeah.
after after the lawns, or even while I'm watching the rugby. But even then, I don't do that often because watching the All Blacks can become a bit emotional.
Yeah. You yeah, so no, it's interesting, the self-talk that
Yeah,
emerges within us, Tony, isn't it? And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
mm, for our
and
survivors watching,
mm,
and Tony's already shared it, but he'll continue, I'm hoping, that our self-talk is often fueled from this very early experience we've had.
yeah,
And you see, what a lot of people don't realize is that by the age of 8, our self-esteem is set.
mm,
So yeah,
yeah,
back to you.com.
yeah. So we spend a little bit of time talking about how we treat ourselves, how we speak to ourselves in our peer support group that we hold. So on a Thursday night, so tonight, we're in group tonight, and some of the guys in group have served time behind the wire, others haven't. They're like, how did we not end up here? So we talk about that, but the thing was, they've also found, or they went searching for other ways of keeping themselves in that space, because it became a comfort zone. That negativity that we were sitting with became a comfortable thing. So any little bit of light that popped out, it was, we got fearful of it, and of course, we turn and run, and so we go looking for a bit more negativity to keep us safe.
It's yeah. What do you put that down to? Is it a comfort thing? Is it what we used to? What would you say that is?
Yeah, it's I'm not a counsellor or a psychologist, but it just seems that to me, in talking with the men that I'm supporting and our support group, it's like a thing that we all did, just at a different level. We all had varying levels of how we went looking for this thing that was going to keep us keep us safe, keep everybody away. We put on this big facade. Sometimes, we puff up, and make ourselves 10 foot tall and bulletproof, just to keep ourselves safe. We especially so for some of our whānau where this the violation happened in their home, so they go looking for another whānau, and that so they find they're out on the streets, they look, they find their peers, then all of a sudden there's a gang member involved somehow, there's addictions involved, gangs involved, or however that pans out, and all of it, next minute they're prospecting.
Yeah.
They're getting this aroha from this club, and no disrespect to them, good on them for keeping each other safe. But that's not, we all have the right to, as you mentioned earlier, to be in a safe environment as children in our own homes. And if they aren't safe, children are going to go elsewhere. They're going to go looking for it elsewhere.
Well, and I think it's a really valid point that you raise. In my humble opinion, no child is born evil. Children are born beautiful, inquisitive, inquiring, joyful, just a gift really to the world. It's what happens to them that creates what we're seeing, and that doesn't happen as a child. That happens to a child from an adult.
Yep.
So I think for those among us who have been behind bars, or those who have a loved one behind bars, it is not what they have done. The question needs to be, what's happened to you?
Yeah.
Or what hasn't happened for you?
Yeah. And, I'm sitting here and I'm recalling some of the conversations that I had as a corrections officer, and it was like, popping that question was like best of luck at getting an answer.
I know.
Because they're showing vulnerability,
I know.
and in such a negative environment,
You
constantly walking around with their back against the wall.
Yeah.
Showing any sort of vulnerability is just not going to happen. And if it does, they know that things aren't going to go well for them. So
I know. I'm hoping though that our justice system has counselling available within prisons, or that there are groups these men and women can join, or that they do have speakers going in to talk to them.
Yeah.
Because
Sorry. Oh,
not,
sorry. Yeah. So our organisation, we have uh, we have counsellors that are contracted to the organisation that are working inside, the Spring Hill, Waikato, Tongariro, and Whanganui prisons. Not quite sure about the others, how that works, but that's just through our organisation. I'm also at the moment putting together a package of, we're designing it over this year so we can put it to corrections next year, to have a peer support group inside the wire for those that want to attend, for those that identify that that's what they're living with. Of course, they'll need to be working with a counsellor as well.
yes.
But then we have the peer support group. Not quite sure how that's going to work. I was just talking about that vulnerability.
Yes, I was
Don't want to
wondering.
show vulnerability in that behind the wire. So we're not quite sure how that's going to, how that would work. But we'll design it, because we can't go in there and just sit down and have a chat. We need to put something together where we're actually going to be passing on a few tools as well, and hopefully, these guys will be able to come out and carry on with the support group in the area, wherever they're going to be living. We've got support groups here in Hamilton. I myself looking to start one in a peer support group for male survivors in Taumaranui, as well as in Taupo. Hopefully getting those up and running over the next couple of months.
Wow, fantastic.
I've got the venue, and I've got our providers, our counselling providers that are working in those areas, that are having these conversations with the guys that they're working with. And then it's about getting them in contact with me, and then we'll get those support groups started down there. But yeah,
that would be incredible.
Oh yeah. I think it's one thing that needs to happen. And for other guys that just want to come along, they might be waiting to start counselling. That's a big thing for us, is there's not enough sexual survivor specialists, counsellors out there. There's a big wait list.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So, having the peer support group is another way that can help our survivors before they start counselling, and while they're still in counselling, or during counselling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right, and having people that have experienced it means, you see, when you're in a group or in the company of our beautiful survivors, you never have to really explain anything, because there's an instant recognition or understanding, or there's just a deep understanding. The other thing I think that can be challenging for both men and women survivors is this: there's a little myth out there that women are not abusers, and we know that they are. And so a lot of male survivors that I've interviewed or spoken to have said, look, women were involved, or a woman abused me, but they don't talk about it because of the shame and kind of the unconscious belief society has, which is, oh, you're lucky, mate.
Yeah, it's crazy, how long's that corridor been around? I can remember being at high school, and I went to an all-male high school, and it was a big talk. As a 13, 14-year-old, I'm hearing this. Oh, you've got to go to bed with a woman. Or I'm like, well, why?
Yeah.
You know, no. You know, geez, it just, it was the furthest thing from my mind,
No.
really.
Yeah, no, it's huge. But look,
Mm,
tell us a little bit. You're kind of a peer support worker for Male Support Services. What does that entail, Tony? What's kind of your role, if you like? How are you guys helping our survivor family?
okay. So I do both one-on-one and group uh, peer support. So with the group stuff, it's awesome because I'm sitting there and I'll guide the conversations, or I'll just let them unfold as it is. And as I say to everybody in the group, we're all leaders here. You know, any one of us can take over and bring whatever it is to the group, and let's support that. Let's talk about that. Does it, okay, it work for you? Okay, how can it work for me? And figure that out. The one-on-one stuff is it's a little bit different and much the same as well. We're both survivors. We're both sitting there. We're both sitting there having a coffee, or we're walking around the park, which I find being in the open space is really, really helpful for people to open up. We're sitting there and we're talking, and we're not, as you said before, we don't sit there and go into detail about what happened. And unless you want to do that, I'm quite happy to go, to tell people what happened, and then, but I'm also conscious of impacting. How my story is going to impact them, and I'm also conscious about how their story will impact me. And we'll sit there and we'll talk, and we could just talk about what happened yesterday, and I was walking down the street and and I had a response to this guy who was over there and he was yelling at his partner. And, and then when all of a sudden we're talking about that and how it made you feel and how, how you responded to that, what did you want to do? And what did you do in support of that? So, peer support, um, I think in some cases with, and not being as specialized as what counselling and psychology are, but I think in some cases I can get a little further um, in talking with our men, and breaking down those, the wall, taking those little blocks out of the wall, as we move along, and just helping them in whatever struggles they're having, because it's all as a result of what happened in their past. So, and yeah, and just lining it up, and those that can remember what was life was like beforehand, and I don't know how to get back there. Well, let's, what do we need to do? What do you need to do? What can I do to help you with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I like that. I like that it's got a real practical focus, but it's also safe.
Yeah.
So I think that's
Right.
one. And Tony, I know you're a little bit time poor at the moment, so I just want to move to what has helped you as a survivor? What can you share with our audience today that has helped you in your recovery and healing?
Okay. So, of course, the organisation. So I feel pretty blessed being employed by Male Support Services Waikato. I started my journey 35 odd years ago, or whatever it was when I first told mum. And then I had counsellor after counsellor trying to find the right counsellor. And then I actually got put off by them. And I won't go into detail on that one. I found Male Support Services, and so approached Mike, the manager here. He started the organisation. So I approached Mike, and so we sat down and had a cup of tea and a bit of a chat about it, and then I went through. I had one counsellor and I didn't quite fit with him. Had another one and I was cool as, but he moved out of the area and is now working in the space for survivors Aotearoa. And then I had another counsellor, and we've been together now for 4.5 years, I think it is. We still see each other occasionally. We've moved more into mentoring as opposed to counselling. So he was a huge help, a huge support for me. But the biggest thing is my partner. The biggest thing for me was my partner. Counselling, 1 hour a week. My partner, I'm with, pretty much 16 hours of the day. And with her, she's, she works in the family violence sector. So she's dealt with, she's met survivors as well. She has has this beautiful understanding of some of the stuff that I live with, and she holds space for me when I'm talking and I'm trying to convey how I'm feeling, because I'm not the greatest at descriptive words and describing my feelings and even understanding what they are. I know what fear and anxiety look like beautifully. I can, I can rattle that off no sweat. But these other ones, yeah. But without her, I don't think I would be as far along in my journey as I am. Actually, it was funny. We talk about her. It was only last night that we were talking. Why is there no support group for the partners of survivors? Because some of the things that they're enduring and living with in the home, that the partners need support too.
Well, it's interesting you raise that because,
Mhm.
and not trying to take the attention off you at all. So
All good.
forgive
Yeah,
me, but on this channel, on Handing the Shame Back YouTube,
yeah,
I do have a section for tips for supporting survivors, and we've
that's right.
started.
Yes, yeah,
If you look, there's now 30 of them. They're about 2
right.
minutes long, and
Yeah,
they just give supporters a couple of different tips each week on
nice.
because they need to look after themselves as well. And
Absolutely,
we also
absolutely.
have I've started interviewing some of the supporters, because as survivors we can learn from them. But you're right, there needs to be a proper group. And Tony, I guess the other thing I wanted to ask you was any advice you would give to a survivor who is struggling at the moment. What advice would you give,
Oh,
if any?
yeah. There's a group of us that understand what your struggles are. Um, though some of us may not be living the same or have lived the same struggles, we have an understanding. Um, if you feel that you are able to now reach out, then please do. And the sooner the better. We were not born to live this life. This life was given to us. It was put on us, and we're left carrying, um, carrying the demons of that, of what happened, because the perpetrator is most certainly not. Um, so reach out. This is not yours to carry. You can, you can live your best life. It's over to you. Do you want that?
Yeah.
Do you want that? Do you want to live your best life? Reach out to the organisations. You know, doesn't matter where in the country you are. Survivors Aotearoa, their website's got a link to everybody.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Mm.
Any last words, Tony, from you before we close out?
Yeah, I just want to, thank you, Gloria, and the mahi you're doing in raising awareness and allowing those of us survivors, we talk about peer support. This is exactly what peer support is, exactly what we're doing here. So you're a great peer support worker, but I love it.
Thank
I just want to thank you, for your mahi, and to all our kaimahi out there that are working with survivors. Thank you, thank you so much for the mahi you're doing, and please, don't stop. Supervision is very important. Please make sure you're in contact with your supervisor. Don't be like this one. Runs from supervision at the first opportunity. But I'm getting better. I'm getting better.
Do what he says, not what he does.
Yeah.
Hey, look, thank you so much, Tony. Please stay right there. To our beautiful audience, without you, this wouldn't exist. And just know that I see you, I believe you, and I stand beside you always. For Tony, who has joined us today, and his wisdom and his generosity and sharing, feel very grateful to him. And he said a few things. Well, he said a lot of things, but a couple of things that I think are really powerful. One is that he talked about we were not born to live this life. What happened to us created this life. And we can actually find a way through, and it is just one little step at a time, I believe. The other thing he talked about was that having peer support can actually help you sometimes get a little bit further than perhaps traditional counselling or what a partner may or may not say, and that we're not discounting anything that they offer as well. So in the meantime, look after your beautiful selves. We're very lucky to have you. And please do like, subscribe, and share this video.